Hello, Rory Dowse here from Kano Piano, and today we're going to look at Bach's Minuet in G major.
Kano Piano, cultivate, create, communicate.
So this is a charming little piece, and probably one of the first bigger pieces that you've actually played. So if you're playing this piece, you're probably at a stage where you've got some beginner learning behind you. You may even be playing this just in an abridged form and quite a short form. But this is a great little piece, and one that I'm really glad that you're actually playing. So here it goes. It goes a little something like this. So it's a lovely little piece. We've got a couple of ornaments in there that we can talk about. It's a little bit longer than maybe the edition that you have. I generally tend to teach this piece from a great beginner book called Pam Wedgwood, It's Never Too Late to Learn Piano. And actually, it just teaches the abridged form, which ends, here. And if you're doing that, that's great. But if you're playing the whole piece, then you can actually find it on IMSLP. You can just Google or search on IMSLP the details of this piece. I'm kind of pointing to the top like it's there somewhere. It might be down there, actually. I think this is YouTube style, right? So, yeah, you can absolutely search for that and get that off that database. I would recommend, if you like this piece, learning the second part of it. And so let's get stuck in right from the start. So this little piece is in the key of G major. So you want to be comfortable with that first of all. So we've got the G major scale here. Some of you may already be familiar with this. It's just making sure that you actually include that F sharp. It is a minuet, which is a type of dance, which is generally in 3/4 time like this piece. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's take a little look at this. So in the first bar, we have just like a 5-finger exercise almost, where we have. If that's something that you're familiar with, great. But if you haven't yet practiced a 5-finger exercise, I'd recommend starting your practice with that each day. What that basically is putting your hand on the piano, putting one finger to one key, and literally just playing up and down from the G to the D and back down. If this is kind of new for you, you might want to search for our courses on practice technique that get into the 5-finger exercise in a little bit more detail. But that's really it in a nutshell. And so what you want to do when you're playing this is just make sure that it's really even in tone. So you want 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Try to avoid, those sort of hallmarks that, it's just a little bit new. You can hear that it's a little bit uneven in places. But you want it to be nice and even with a bit of a crescendo on that rising scale. Now you might say, well, how do you know how to play expressively? How do you know to do a crescendo on that rising scale? And actually it's quite a simple answer. Basically if the music gets a little bit higher, you want to get louder. And if it gets lower, you want to get softer. Now that's a gross generalization, exaggeration. There's so many nuances beyond that. But it kind of makes sense, right? Because if you were to sing something like this, la 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 la, it just has that little bit of energy, a little bit of motion, and it takes a bit more energy to sing higher, of course, as well. So that all comes together to produce that effect. And if it is a little bit new for you playing with dynamics, you're kind of used to playing the piano like. And you think, I just want to play more expressively. And by the way, if you're playing this piece at this stage, I'd say that maybe is something that's relevant for you. Then what you can actually do is start your practice with that 5-finger exercise and work some dynamics in there. So for example, you can start soft and get gradually louder with each note. And that might seem so simple, and it is, but it's simple and effective. What it means is that your dynamics are there right from the word go, and you can bring it into this piece. So let's see what we have here. We've got this little phrase structure. 4 bars or 4 measures, if you prefer, phrase structure. The first part then is on the G major chord, and then the next part is more towards C major. We've still got the F sharp though. And next up then we've got this thing called a descending sequence. Now if that's new for you, great, because this is all over the place in Baroque music. Whenever you play Bach, then you're going to see this everywhere, or Handel or one of those composers. I should say, by the way, that with this piece, I don't think this is written by J.S. Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, who you probably heard of. I think it's either, oh goodness, his name escapes me, but it's one of the other Bachs, or it's J.S. Bach's wife. I think this is part of the Anna Magdalena notebook, but I'm getting a little bit nerdy on the history here. You know, if you want to Google that and find out a little bit more on the history, by all means. But you know, it's all relevant to Baroque pieces, so you'll learn about these descending sequences here. You'll see descending sequences everywhere. Now, what is a descending sequence? It is basically a pattern that repeats either lower or higher in steps. So, for example, if we were to have, let's say, the start of this, and then we were to take it in an ascending sequence, we might have. And you can see there, it's the same pattern, but just getting higher. Now, here in bar 5, or measure 5, I should say, what we have is a descending sequence. And that pattern then goes lower, and that's where it stops. Now, these little things make for fantastic studies. If you're one of those students who's learning the piano and you're playing your scales, you're playing your studies every day, that's just fantastic. If that's something you need to be doing a little bit more of, then fine, of course. But there are so many little scales and studies and little exercises that you can make from pieces that really, really bring your technique along. And this is really one of them. And so what I'd recommend you do with something like this, just to get comfortable with it, is take the descending sequence and just run down, 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 down the piano. For example. Oh, well, that's more or less what's written. Let's see, let's try that again. So you can see that I've taken that pattern and I've just played it down the scale. And what that means is when something like that comes along, I can already anticipate the pattern because I've made it a little bit harder. It sounds much more even, and it's just there and it's just ready to go, basically.